Welcome, friends, to our Wednesday meditation and talk. We're being webcasted on my YouTube pages, and also this is available through IMCW. Let's begin with meditation as we do. Take some moments to find a posture that supports you. Maybe you can sense the posture from the inside out. So you feel that quality of tallness and being alert, and also at ease, relaxed. Letting the eyes close, and feeling the movement of the breath, and perhaps sensing the breath at the heart, as if you could breathe in and out of your heart. Taking these moments to listen and sense what your intention is right now for your practice, for meditating. It's really the question, what does my heart really long for? What most matters? And the way you know you've connected with your heart is there can be a quality of sincerity, kind of innocence. One of the most powerful pathways to presence is awakening through the body, inhabiting these bodies with awareness. And you might begin by gently scanning through your body and noticing if there's any areas of really obvious tension or tightness. Sense what wants to let go a little. Sometimes around the eyes you can feel a tightness, and just by smiling into the eyes there can be a softening and a relaxing, a smoothing of the brow. You can relax the habitual tightening of a jaw with similarly a slight smile. And for many of us, there's a chronic tension in the shoulders. So you might sense, if you fill that area with awareness, if there can be a natural softening, releasing. Let the hands be soft. Allowing the chest to be open and softening right down through the belly. Perhaps feeling the contact points where your bottom is sitting on a cushion or chair, your hands are touching your thighs or each other, the warmth, pressure. Your feet touching the floor. So you can feel this whole body sitting here breathing. And if you pay attention to your feet right now, you might sense, is it that you have feet? Are you actually living inside your feet, inhabiting them? Notice what happens if you bring your whole attention and awareness inside the feet. The toes, the space between the top of the feet and the soles, heels, filling the feet with aliveness. Are you able to sense the tingling and the vibrating there? The space that the aliveness is floating in? In a similar way, can you fill the legs with aliveness? Can you sense the length and the volume of the legs? Let awareness fill the legs. Feeling the movement of energy. Can you fill the pelvic region with awareness? Opening to the aliveness there. Space and aliveness. You might soften the belly again, letting this next breath be received in a softening belly. This breath. And now this one. And again. Feeling awareness filling the whole abdominal cavity. Again, an openness at the chest, and see if you can feel from the inside out the area of the heart. Are you aware of the vibrating and pulsing, perhaps a squeeze or flow, warmth, aliveness? Letting the shoulders be filled with awareness, inhabiting the shoulders. So that you can allow whatever tightness or tension remains to float in awareness. Feeling the length of the arms with awareness, feeling the volume from the inside out, the movement of energy, right down through the hands. Hands are very soft. And feeling them from the inside out. Tingling, vibrating, floating in space. Sensing the cylinder of the neck filled with awareness, as if your throat could fill your neck. Aware of the tingling, vibrating flows of energy there. Again, that slight smile at the mouth, the jaw unhinged. You feel from the inside out the sensations of the mouth, gums, the teeth, tongue, the lips. And widening out to feel the whole face filled with sensation. The scalp, the skull, the brain. And since this whole body is a field of sensation, filled with space and aliveness. Feeling everything all at once, not stopping anything, not opposing anything. You might imagine the space that extends outward to either side endlessly. Space behind you, in front of you, above and below, extending outward and outward beyond the furthest stars. And can you imagine that outer space and this inner space as continuous space? Continuous space. And can you imagine that continuous space filled with the light of awareness, suffused with awareness? Resting as awareness in this awake space. Allowing and including the changing flow of sound and sensation, feelings, thoughts, all appearing and dissolving in this continuous space that's suffused with awareness. At some point there'll be a noticing that the mind's drifted. And in those moments there's this opportunity to gently relax back. The pathway home, back to this open awakefulness, is a relaxing back, Again, aware of the sounds that are right here, the aliveness and sensations right in this moment. Listening to and feeling the moment. Sensing the aliveness and the space it's happening in. Moment to moment, sensing the quality of here-ness, being right here, living presence. This continuous space suffused with the light of awareness. We close with a simple prayer. May we come home to the light, love, and aliveness that's our deep nature. May we live our lives from loving presence. May that loving presence ripple out in a way that brings peace and healing to our world. Namaste. Gently take some nice full breaths and make that transition now from the formal practice to being right here, present and mindful. You might move around a bit if that helps you. I'll make some announcements for this upcoming week, and I begin by always inviting you to my website, tarabrach.com, for virtual offerings. I'd like to remind you that December 7th, Sunday, December 7th, I'm offering with my husband, Jonathan Faust, a day-long called Choosing Love in Perilous Times. And you can attend live. It's at Catholic University in DC and also online. We don't do this very often, so I hope you can join us. It's just so easy to feel isolated and caught up in reactivity and fear and anger. So it's a wonderful chance to be in community together, to wake up our hearts together. Another offering, and this is a year-long program starting January 2026. I'm creating a year-long practice community focusing on the theme of choosing to love, encouraging those with more experience to participate in the sense of the prerequisites being having a meditation practice and being familiar with the practice of rain. So you can find this on my homepage. There's limited enrollment, so please check it out and see if this is a fit for you. Please check imcw.org for live stream offerings made available by our local teachers. And the shared experience sanghas this week are for seniors, young adults, teens of color mindfulness group, and Heartwith and family. Each week, 8:30 p.m. East Coast time, we have mindful dialogue. So you might want to join in on that. The call-in information is tarabrach.com/class. I also mention each week donations. As most are aware, this is offered freely, the teachings, the practices, and what you give by way of donation makes a great difference, and we really appreciate it. So you can find the links for donating in the description. Now we move to this week's talk. Namaste. Welcome, my friends. Some of you have heard of Marie Kondo. She became known for teaching about decluttering and choosing really what sparks joy. So she has created a community along with Patty Morrissey, and it's dedicated to living with intention and cultivating joy. And Patty asked me for an interview, and I agreed. And so what follows is a wonderful conversation we had about the meaning of spirituality, about what makes for a spiritually awake person, basic habits that sustain a vibrant life, the role of humor on the path, how tidiness, which is basic to KonMari Method, can either control us, trying to be too tidy, or actually become a liberating act of presence and care. One question that was pitched to me that I somehow didn't answer was my personal experience around tidiness. So I feel compelled to confess, partly because Jonathan, my husband, threatened to out me, that beyond the Zoom view that you see, my office is not yet tidy. I honor tidiness, and I'm on a very steep learning curve. So I wanted to share that with you along with this interview and the wish that you find this to be enjoyable and valuable. Okay, thank you.
So when we begin our month related to different themes, some of our themes are body, time, money, creativity, and then here we are in spirituality month. It's one of those words that often means something different to different people. So how do you define it? Can you give us a shared definition to move forward with? And beyond that, what are some qualities that you see in people that have a healthy or robust spiritual life? And maybe I'm taking the language of personal development and applying it incorrectly to spirituality, but what does an A plus look like? This- what does it look like to achieve or to be in right relationship with our spiritual life?
Yeah, oh, it's a beautiful question. So maybe just to share a story that I often draw on as a kind of metaphor, which And this is a true story of there was this statue in Southeast Asia that was not a particularly attractive statue. It was huge, plaster clay, but people loved it, visited every year, tons and tons of people. And one year, and this was in the 50s, 1950s, a big crack appeared. It'd been really dry weather. And one of the monks looked through the crack to see the infrastructure, and what shone back was the gleam of gold. And they took it apart. They took off the coverings, what turned out to be coverings. It's the largest solid gold statue of the Buddha in Southeast Asia. But here's the thing that's interesting to me, which is that, and the monks believe this, and historians have their own version of it, is that just as we go through difficult times and we cover over our innate purity, that's what happened with the statue. That was just difficult years, invading armies and different changes of government and so on. So they covered it over to protect it. And we do that too. And what's the tragedy of it is that we come to think we're the coverings, the personality, the defenses. We get identified with the ego coverings and forget the gold. And so, really, what spiritual paths are about are to wake up our sense of who we are beyond the ego, so we can remember really the innate purity that's here, that in us which really loves to love, that in us which really wants to see truth, that really wants to know truth, to live in truth. And so the whole process is, can we remember the gold? Can we remember who we really are? And it's not like pretending the coverings aren't there. We all have our egos and our defenses and our ways of protecting. Can we hold that with mindfulness, with kindness, with humor? And so when you ask, what does a person look like when they're really embodying that? And you can think of it in your own lives, like the moments when you're really trusting a deeper sense of who you are, a deeper belonging with others. There's a natural way of feeling caring about the life inside you, caring about other people, caring about animals, caring about our larger community. So I'd say for me, it's like the Dalai Lama said, my religion is kindness. It's that caring and kindness that goes beyond the letter A plus that I think is the most powerful expression of anyone who's really remembering the gold. And there are others. I think of the kind of honesty, the willingness to be vulnerable, like the coverings are there. Can we name what's there? Can we be real with it rather than pretending? And that feels like a really big one. There's a quality of courage, willing to risk and really turn towards what's scary. I think that's another one of them. And with each other, there's what I call mirroring the gold or mirroring the goodness. And I really see this a lot in people that I feel like are most awake, is they help other people trust their goodness. Do you know what I mean by that? When you're with somebody and they really help you remember. One of the authors, she's also a physician, Rachel Naomi Remen, tells a story about her grandfather who was a realized, very awake person spiritually. He was a rabbi. And he used to call her Neshimala, which means little beloved soul. And he told her that, and she came to sense that's what she was. And when he died, she was a little afraid she'd forget, but she discovered that once blessed, forever blessed. And she told her mother about her grandfather's blessings. And her mother said, Rachel, I have prayed for you every day of my life. I just never had the wisdom to do it out loud. And that's part of, Patty, when you asked me about really how this shows up, spirituality shows up, is that with each other, we mirror the goodness. It's the greatest gift we can give each other, is to remind each other that we're lovable and that we're good. Yeah. Thank you for that question.
Beautiful. I was looking for inspiration for my protest sign this weekend, and I was reading Mr. Rogers' book on how to live a good life, and he said something like that, to the practice of remembering the people, he'd use different language, who loved you out loud.
Mhm.
So it reminded me of that. I just wanted to highlight that as something for us to take away as a reflection point of who was that person in your life who loved you out loud. And when I'm teaching folks here, especially our new members, on this contemplation exercise and sitting in a presence of unconditional love, sometimes a loving person in our lives, we can take on their voice if our own inner voice isn't so kind and loving, right? Or our inner thoughts aren't so kind and loving. Where is a voice that we've experienced that is? And I also want to highlight for us the practice of mirroring. That's something that our small groups are designed to do as well, and be that place where we can be our most honest selves, where the meetings aren't recorded. And we end every meeting, Tara, with a practice of elevation, of sharing when you felt elevated by someone else's share because of the kindness or the bravery or how enlivening it was when they told that story. And that's something that we're trying to train ourselves to do here in this space, with the hope that it can ripple out and translate out to how we're interacting with people broadly. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. So one of the things I've noticed is that when many folks who are coming to this community, or have experienced that myself, it seems easier or more automatic to tap into spiritual practices when we need help. And William James says all religions and spiritual traditions begin with the cry help. And I also love Anne Lamont's book, Help, Thanks, Wow. Why do you think that is, that when kind of life is too much, where we can't handle it, or there's big burdens upon us, that's the time we seek out guidance and help?
Yeah, it's a great question. And William James described it that the reason religions start with the cry help is because even if we delude ourselves into thinking, oh, everybody else is going to die, but not me, we feel our mortality. We feel we have a fundamental insecurity. And so that call on something larger to help us comes out of that, that we know that if we're in a separate human ego, that it's going to end and that we can't control that. And so what I've noticed is that we all have our management strategies to try to control. And and I'm sure you've explored this together, just to look at what are my ways of trying to control life. Always think of John O'Donohue, who said, we manage our lives so fully so as to cover over the mystery that we're involved with. And we know it. I can say for myself, I know all the ways I'm trying to manage to make sure that others cooperate with me, or I get what I want, or I don't make mistakes, or whatever it is. So what happens is we go through life with our management strategies, and inevitably we hit something where life is too big and too powerful and doesn't cooperate. This was the story of the Buddha. The Buddha was just going along being a rich young prince until he encountered aging, sickness, and death. And we encounter all of that. We encounter changes. We're living in a time right now. That is the essence of the time, that our world is really tumbling into a shadow, and we can feel that. And so a lot of us are on some level saying, how can I help and what will help? Because it's so much bigger than our normal strategies of trying to make things work out. So I can say for myself, I had a very deep experience of that where things went along fairly well until in my early 50s, I started spiraling into sickness. And it was for about 6 years that I was getting sicker and sicker. Turns out it was part of a genetic disorder I have, and I'm way better now. I'm way healthier than I was then. But we didn't know what it was, and I had no reason to think I was going to get better. And so it hit a point where, on some deep level, my cells were crying out, help. It's like, how can I live through this feeling like everything that matters to me in life is being taken away? I was very athletic. I couldn't do sports and the other things in nature I used to love to do. I was afraid, I knew I was going to have grandchildren, I wouldn't be able to play with my grandchildren. It went in every which direction. And I remember pretty much a distinctive moment where one of my favorite things to do is play in the ocean, and I couldn't walk on sand anymore. And we're all up on Cape Cod in the United States off Massachusetts, and friends, family all went together to the beach, and I got left behind. And this feeling of this crushing sense that the life I loved was taken from me. And there was this prayer, but it was different than help. It was really, may I live and love may I love this life no matter what. May I trust in something deeper than just this body being healthy. And I've come to consider that as turning towards a larger refuge, a true refuge, not a false refuge, but something where I was actually feeling myself belonging to a sacredness, a vastness, an awareness, a love that was larger than the living, dying world, than this changing body. And that was really a deepening of spirituality for me. And even as I got better, I felt like my practice and my focus and my attention was knowing that everything gets taken away. And as everything gets taken away, what is it that holds this life? And for me, it was this loving awareness that was larger than my body or ego self. That's a bit of a kind of more full-blown personal story, but I think we all get shaken at different times, and then it's very natural to look towards something larger and more trustworthy than whatever we were, depending on whether it was our looks or our intelligence or whatever it was. We need to take refuge in something larger.
Yeah, this might sound weird. Not that we wish for pain, but there's something about going through painful times that has an aliveness to it, a rawness to it that I kind of love.
There's an Asian prayer, I don't remember what country, that says, grant me difficult times, that has that same notion of please shake it up so that I can not get into a trance, so that I can stay real.
Stay real. Yeah, the trance. I'm reading Francis Weller's The Wild Edge of Sorrow right now.
Beautiful book, beautiful book.
Oh, yeah. This just the reality of acknowledging that we're going to lose everything that we love. And I'm bouncing around in my mind a little bit, but I want to go back to what you said around control strategies. I do think that the community that's built around very precise methods of folding and sorting and putting things away, we have a tendency a little bit to lean on control and perfectionism as some of our strategies. And I would like to hear as a follow-up to what you shared of how do the practices of the KonMari method, taking care for our environment and having reverence for the things in our life and gratitude for the things in our life, it's very much the spiritual practice or an applied kind of meditative practice. But it can also be taken too far where it becomes this fixed, tight control strategy. How do we tell the difference when we're using something for our opening or it's closing us?
Yeah, it's actually a super important question to do with any meditation, because we can take any meditation, and if we grab onto it and we're trying to achieve something with it, if we're striving, it actually reifies a sense of a insufficient self trying to get somewhere. So like that story of the guy that goes to the Zen monastery and said, "How long will it take me to get enlightened?" And the master said, 10 years. And that guy said, "What if I try really hard? 20 years." He said, "Wait a minute, you just said 10 years. For you, 30." And it's that idea. It's like it depends on the spirit and that we're bringing to the practice. And so whether it's to do with tiding or whether it's to do with concentrating the mind on the breath, we need to remember our deepest intention for the practice. And if the reason that we're tiding is to create a clearing in the dense forest of our life, to create space so we can remember what really matters to our heart, so we can listen more, so we can clear the clutter in our mind, the emotional, unnecessary, vibratory distractions, so we can pay attention more deeply. Beautiful. And if it gets OCD, then to hold that with with a lot of kindness and with humor, because humor helps a whole lot. It's like,
Mhm.
and by the way, we always bring our ego tendencies to spiritual practice. So this isn't like a just in case this happens to happen. It's yeah, of course we do. And one teacher called it spiritual materialism. We do it. So that's why it's like we are trying to remember the gold, and and our neurotic stuff from the coverings has its play in it. Does that make sense? So we just keep our eyes open, and that's where we're helping each other. So if you see me getting into striving too much, or else resigning and giving up, or whatever it is that my particular personality is doing, with love, you can say, wow, you have all this potential to walk in love and in freedom and to relax. And here's, have you noticed this? We have to remind each other.
Yeah, one of the most loving things someone ever said to me was they basically invited me to just be. And they said, your job right now is to just be. Don't try to fix anything or accomplish anything or make money with anything, and just be in the truth of the situation. And the truth of the situation ended up being the love of the situation. So you bring up humor, and you use humor quite a bit in your teachings, and two parts to this. What is it about humor? Anne Lamott calls it, uh, what did she? Carbonated holy water.
That's great. That's great.
And what is it about humor that helps us access something? And I think some of our kind of spiritual models, they just have this big grin. They're happy people. And the second question is, how do you actually organize all of your clippings? Because
Organize all my what?
all your clippings, I have what that was one of the areas when I'm helping people tidy their homes. They have a box of scraps of paper of things that inspire them, and you always have the right story, or not the right one, but the a great story or a great cartoon for the right moment. Do you have a way that you actually organize your paperwork around that. So what's the role of humor and spirituality? And then how do you, Tara Brach, organize all of your inspo for your talks?
Okay, part one, that quote, real famous, I think Chesterton or somebody who said, angels fly because they take themselves lightly. This spiritual path can get very heavy handed if we are buying into some idea of a separate self that's climbing up a mountain, trying to get to the mountaintop to have some transcendent experience. It gets very heavy and exhausting and like oppressive. And it's a lot more, instead of the idea of climbing up a mountain to get to the mountaintop, it's more like we're turning around and seeing the world and embracing it and all its messiness and confusion and beauty and mystery. And so it's just not such a individual effortful thing. I love what you said, Patty, about the shift from doing to being. Because if there's any true meditation, there's a lot of practices that help us become more skillful, that cultivate some good qualities. But the deepest freedom are the meditations where we stop doing anything, where we stop trying to control anything, and we just let life be as it is. And in those moments, we start inhabiting the awareness and openness and tenderness that really is the truth of who we are, is the goal. So humor, it helps us to lighten it up and not take that ego self and all its busy doings so seriously. That's and it also it feels good, and it helps to feel good. We get so grim with the negativity bias that we all have, and I know you all know about that. We get so grim. We're so quickly going towards what's gonna go wrong that humor is like a great interruption of that. And the biggest grimness is that I call it the trance of unworthiness, that we move through this life and this path on some deep level, thinking we're trying to fix a deficient cell. And it's very deep because it's in the culture. This isn't a personal problem, this trance of unworthiness. We're in a very hierarchical culture that sends all sorts of messages that to be beautiful, you have to look this way and be this color and have this kind of symmetry and have this kind of a body that's not healthy, even. And you know what I'm talking about. And to be intelligent, oh my gosh, our children are going in school systems to tell them that intelligence is a certain sliver of left brain intelligence that is just one of many. And then they grow up and they feel like they're stupid, which I say that and I always feel like a real sorrow because what a way to crimp a life. So I'm saying all this, that the trance of unworthiness is really big. And even if we don't think we're damaged goods, it's like on some level, there's a sense of not being enough, which keeps us striving and keeps us heavy. It's like that cartoon of the dog who's saying, it's always good dog this and good dog that. But is it ever great dog? It's like we have this perfectionism that is such a setup for suffering. So, long-winded way to say, yeah, we need to lighten it up. We need to feel the suffering, but also to absolutely intentionally, on purpose, turn towards the light is and have our bodies and our hearts feel lifted up.
Beautiful. It's one of the practices that we do. So each month when we're coming up with our cultivation plans, we base our work here on identity-based habit building. So we use mantras for that. I am someone who, and it's not grandiose mantras, it's that we have to believe it. It has to feel true when we say it right now, today, as we are. And the mantras I like people to start with are things like, I am human, I am deserving of love, or I am enough. And I sometimes wonder when people sign up for a program with the intent of improving their life, if that's going to be adequate to satisfy them. It's like the dynamic you were saying around visiting the monk, and it's going to take just as much, but it's that whole Carl Rogers idea of I need to love myself and accept myself for who I am before I can make any change happen. So I do see this tension between always wanting to, and maybe that's the yoga thing that I lean back on a lot of, always striving and always letting go at the same time, like just staying right at that edge. That can be really hard to do because I'm not hearing you say it's not worth growing. And
Yeah, there's a really big difference between striving and wise effort. I think that's where you're going. And I love that you're bringing it up because even the most experienced students I know get stuck on striving. It's very deep in the architecture of our brain to have an idea of a map of where we're going in time, we're going into the future, and the who we are and trying to get better. We really like to feel like we're progressing. It makes us feel better about ourselves. So it's one of the deep hooks because ultimately, to realize the gold, we have to realize we're not going anywhere. And it's not a self who's realizing the gold. The gold doesn't really have anything to do with the self. It's when that sense of identity with the self drops away that the gold shines through. It's in those moments, and you've all had them, where you might be with somebody who's dying and just that ego self is just falls away and you're just in a field of loving and tenderness. Or with birth and you're sensing this miracle, this awesomeness, and it's just no longer confined by that ego self or in nature. I don't know how many of you do this, but I go out and I touch trees and I feel communion with trees and I can feel that dropping away of a familiar ego self. And then it's in silence when we get really quiet, when there's really space. The stories that keep perpetuating that familiar sense of self quiet, and there's a vastness that is delicious. It's also scary. It's disorienting if we're not used to it. So much of the path is just starting to get familiar with those moments of not being so confined in that story. Because we spend a lot of the spiritual path is wrapped in concepts, in ideas about a self getting somewhere. I often think about this is another one of those Zen stories where a novice asks the abbot, "What happens after we die?" And the abbot says, "I don't know." And the novice says, "I thought you were a Zen master." And he said, "I am, but not a dead one." And we can't think our way to freedom. And yet we're very habituated to relying on our thoughts to tell us about reality. So it takes a real surrendering. And this is a lot of the training of meditation practice, of just letting go of the virtual reality, the thoughts, and then opening up into the thisness. And because we're so unfamiliar, we very quickly, our default is to hold on again to some idea of what we're doing and what's happening and how we should do it better or whatever it is. And then we let go again, letting go and then letting go of the letting go. It's just a continuous relaxing of the grip until we're resting in a spaciousness and a wakefulness and a tenderness that's not so confined.
thank you. I have two more questions and then we'll have a moment to answer questions from everyone here in the room too. So so in our monthly practice, we grab an idea, something that we're curious about that we think might aid our growth in this area of our life. So, for someone who's wanting to cultivate more of a deeper, authentic spiritual connection or spiritual practice, what are some of the foundational practices? Growing up Catholic, for me, that I was told I had to go to church every Sunday. That was the thing. So, what is the thing or the things from your perspective that someone should think about starting with to enter into this?
Yeah. When I think of the church on Sunday, the poet Rumi says, "Do you make regular visits to yourself?" And yeah, beyond church on Sunday, we need to pause a lot because we leave ourselves. We go off in that virtual reality. So, one of the foundational practices, whether we call it formal meditation or the sacred art of pausing, which I know you're all aware of, is to create some space and just ask those two questions. It's so simple and powerful. Like, what's happening inside me right now? And just notice what happens when you just, what's happening inside me right now? Immediately, there's more listening, more presence. And can I be with this? Or can I let this be? And that gives a little space and tenderness. So that's one piece, is to pause and deepen attention, but not just when you're in a formal meditation practice. Pause, you can pause even while there's activity because it's a consciousness expression. So do it informally too. You can pause just for a moment before eating or before getting out of a car or before going online. Just pause and come back home. And then, very related to that, and this is really, I think, at least a regular daily reflection, hopefully many times a day, is keep asking yourself what most matters. The Zen teachers put it, they say, the most important thing is remembering the most important thing. And in the moments that you're really remembering, at times you're going to ask that question, what most matters, and the mind will be spinning, and because you're disconnected, you're not intimate with the moment, and you'll come up with old things you've thought of in the past. That's okay, quiet a little, but then ask again. If it was at the end of your life looking back, what would most matter? The palliative caregivers, one friend of mine, thousands of people she's been with, said that the greatest regret of the dying is not living true to our heart, not living true to what most matters to us. So to keep asking that, I would consider that as another foundational practice for a spiritual life. Another thing I'll say, and this is for a spiritual life, especially in this day and age, is self-compassion. Have the intention for self-compassion. The trance of unworthiness is so pervasive. It's not our personal problem, but it's a pervasive sense of not okayness. And if we can really sense the suffering of it, like how many moments has that sense of being deficient stopped you from being intimate with others or from enjoying a sunset or being more risk-taking or creative? We know how much it stops us from living. So to respond to what's going on inside with compassion, really important, and to respond to others with compassion. It just makes a huge difference. And then maybe I'm just going to name a few other things that come to mind. Big one, which I know you all really value, is the power of community. That the truth is, we're not on a path doing something alone. We're waking up together. And it breaks through the delusion of a separate self to experience that with each other. So to be with each other in this waking up process. Serving is part of the spiritual path. Serving and engaging in our world. I think that one of the delusions of the spiritual path is that it's a lot of inner work, but we can't separate the inner work from how we're walking on this earth. Are we taking it? Do we know our belonging to this earth, to all the animals, not just the human ones? And do we engage in our world in a way that helps to relieve suffering? That is part of the spiritual path. And in a daily way, it can be in whatever works for our particular body mind, but that's part of the spiritual path. So I'm naming a lot of things, but it's because I have a very dimensional sense of what it means to be waking up. I don't think of it as put your hands in Gyan Mudra, go into some sort of an altered state with crystal rainbows of light. I really think of it as, are we on this earth with each other, cherishing this life and living from that love?
Beautiful. And I see how all of these things that you've listed can be applied. Is that clear for everyone around how you could take that? We call them self-care experiments and have that be something that you practice with. I'm thinking about my partner who likes his job. It's a job that he's done for a very long time. And one of his spiritual practices is to be really present with all of these many people that he has to interact with every day and just get to know them and open his heart to them. And I think it's beautiful. It's a great example of making it an everyday thing.
And part of that is the more dicey inquiries of how am I creating separation? And what are the biases I haven't seen yet? That we actually are willing to examine what's uncomfortable, because every one of us has control strategies that create separation. And every one of us, because we are conditioned by a hierarchical society that oppresses and diminishes the value of some people, we end up getting inculcated into that. So it's an actual deliberate inquiry to wake up from those trances.
Letting that land, letting that land. So my final question is, one of the things that I've brought into my KonMari consulting practice as a direct result of having you and your teachings in my life was realizing so one of the things that we do in the KonMari Method is help people face difficult truths, and the difficult truth of the logistical situation that they're in when they have a lot of clutter, but often the truth that is lurking in the closet. When people go to a therapy room, they bring what they want into that room. When I'm helping someone sort through their belongings, there's stuff lurking that they might have forgotten about that we're going to stumble upon, and we're going to face it together there. And so part of this decluttering process is a process of confronting the truth. And that's where we start from, is we can confront the truth, and the intelligence of what to do with that truth will emerge. It's how we approach it. And so I've brought your kind of mindfulness and compassion into that space so that people meet the truth with kindness and not judgment. So could you elaborate on that for us, of some techniques to help people confront the difficult truths that they find themselves in, situations that they find themselves in?
Sure. So, Patty, would you like me to talk about it, or would you rather?
Or if you
Should
we talked
I
about
can
doing a
take a few
rain,
minutes? Just
the rain meditation. That would be wonderful.
yeah. Okay. Some of you are familiar, some of you maybe not. That bringing mindfulness and compassion to a difficulty ends up unwinding our identity with it, and it opens us back to the gold. That's basically what it does. It shifts us from the coverings to more of a wholeness. And the acronym I use for mindfulness and compassion is RAIN. It's recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. And I use it in my own life and have done tens of thousands, maybe more times, either briefly or as a longer meditation, and we'll just do it briefly now. But the value of it is when we're stuck, when we're in reactivity, we forget how to come back home. So having 4 steps that are pretty simple can help us to reconnect. So in that spirit, we'll just do a brief practice. Keep this 5 minutes or so just to give you a taste. And if you haven't done it before, there are many recordings and so on that you can access. I'm sure Patty has offered practices that are this or like this. Uh, make yourself comfortable. Make yourself comfortable. And in whatever position works, so you're awake enough and relaxed. And just take a few full breaths. And in the way that works for you the best, gently let yourself arrive right here, right now. So the invitation is to choose somewhere that you've been encountering difficulty, where you know there's something that could use some attention inside. Some situation, it could be in a relationship or work, a habit, maybe addictive habit, where you can sense that there's some healing possible. Not something that brings up trauma or really overwhelming emotions, but something that brings up difficult feelings. And when you have it in mind, bring it in close. So as if you're watching a movie, you can sense right into the scene where you feel you get hooked, you get reactive, where there's a sense something's wrong. Something's wrong with you or with another person or the way life's going. So freeze that frame and go right into it and sense what's the worst part about this. When this is happening, what's it like? The R of rain, recognize, means just to name, mentally whisper whatever you're most aware of here. It might be fear or anger, anxiety, judgment, embarrassment, whatever it is, just mentally whisper it. And if there's a few things, you can whisper a few things and then just sense into which is most calling your attention. So naming some strong feeling. And then A is allow. And allow means letting it be there, that you're not fighting reality, you're allowing reality. This is just a part of, it's like a wave in the sea, it belongs. And if you can say, this belongs too, this is another wave in the sea of what's going on in my life, in my experience. So on some deep level, making room for what's here, not pushing it away. The I is investigate, and that means primarily somatically, to let yourself feel where the feelings are strongest. It can help to ask yourself first, though, what am I believing? When this is triggered, what am I believing? Am I believing that I've failed in some way, that I'm falling short, or that someone else doesn't care about me or respect me, or I'm not important to them? What am I believing? Mostly sense with whatever you're believing, what's it like when you're really hooked, when you're really believing it? And just feel right into your throat, your chest, your belly, probably a familiar feeling. And if you can, let your face express it. This will actually bring it deeper. Let your body, your posture. So if it's fear, you can feel the tightness of it. Or shame, the kind of sinking or hollow, or anger, the clenching, the heat. And with care and interest, go right to where you feel it most strong in your body, like you're going right to that part of you that's most vulnerable. And if it helps, put your hand on your heart. And that's a gesture of you're keeping company right now. You're keeping company with what's going on. And ask the part that's most reactive, most triggered, most vulnerable, how does it want you to be with it? What does this part most need? Right in this moment, what does it need? Does it need to feel companionship, understanding, forgiveness, compassion, love? What does it need to feel? And as you investigate that, you might take a few full breaths and even maybe shift your posture a bit so you feel like you're sitting in a more full, awake place. Just invite in your most awake heart, your high self, your bodhisattva self, as some call it, or your true nature. Just invite in the wisdom and love that lives through you. And sense the possibility of offering to this part of you what it needs. Take your time. You might sense that you're offering from your own awake heart love, warmth, light. Feel it go through your hand if your hand is on your heart. Or you might, if it's hard to offer love from your own high self, imagine someone you love. Patty mentioned it earlier. Imagine someone you trust and love. Their energy, their spirit surrounding you, offering in care. See if you can let it bathe you, wash through you. A deep, tender presence. So it's as if your spiritual heart is holding your human heart. The holder and the held. In these final moments, just sense the presence that's here. Notice the shift from when you started, maybe as the sense of an angry self or hurting self, frightened self, to the space of tenderness that's holding, as if you're the ocean holding the waves. Know this is more true than any story you tell yourself about yourself. The sense of the gold, the heart space, is more true than the small self. This is your home. You might sense, before you open your eyes, what it is you'd like to remember, what feels important to you right now.
You want to be mindful of your time. Or do you have a moment to answer one question from our community?
Yeah, I can actually stay on for a few more minutes.
Okay, I appreciate that. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and then we're going to wish Tara farewell and thank you and goodbye. And we're going to stay on as a community and talk amongst ourselves to process and debrief together. Would anyone like to ask a question?
What is your favorite meditation? Your
Thank-
own?
My favorite? Thank you.
For yourself?
Yeah, it really depends on what's going on. If I'm stirred up, like if I'm triggered, I'll do something like what we just did. I'll do some way of getting in touch with it in my body and holding with compassion and then sensing really who I am that's larger. But if I'm not stirred up, then I'll take some time to quiet my mind with my breath or listening to sound. And then mostly I'm paying attention, I'm resting in awareness and just noticing if a sense of self emerges, just noticing that and relaxing it so I can relax back into a more open, tender awareness. Thank you, Hester. I actually love that question. It's a live one for me.
Tara, thank you so much for your time and your care and your attunement to us and to me today. And so much. And thank you for all that you do to bring love and healing and aliveness to the world. Let's, if we can, take a screenshot group picture and look at the camera, and it'll count us down to 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Thanks for being part of our scrapbook. This is a collective experience for us. We're going to continue revisiting all that you've shared here and through your other trainings and books and podcasts. One of our members here, Drea, has gone through your meditation training program as well. So we'll be sure to communicate with our community as well, different ways to plug in beyond.
Well, Patty, let me thank you because I can feel from all the things you shared how much alignment and what a rich kind of community and offerings that are going on here. So just makes me grateful and happy to know. And blessings to each of you. I could just love the quality of presence that's here. Enjoy.
Thank you. Be well. Take care.